Alright, so now we're going to jump into ZBrush and apply all this high-res detail to our model. Once again adjusted my subsurface mean free path distance down using both those values, and I'm starting to get a lot of my detail to show up kind of the way I want to now. So my values were definitely too high before. I think I'm getting close to where I want them tweaked. I'm starting to see nice crisp lines around the nostril right here, and the details starting to show up really well, like the shadows around the eyes. Before it was really mushy, so it was hard to kind of make out any details in the eyes. So I think I'm getting close. If I want more subsurface in the ear, I can always either paint the maps differently, or I can up that backlight so I'm not getting a lot of rim light on here. So, and also remember, sometimes when we try to force things, it doesn't feel natural. So it should really be the light that's bringing this out. So because I don't have a strong rim on him, it's not necessarily going to feel natural if there's too much red in the ear. So I'm seeing a little bit, and we can go to that single scatter. So you're seeing it just a little bit here. If we also need more, it might mean that my ear is actually too thick, so I could go into this sculpt itself and thin out that area a little bit so we get more subsurface or light coming through there. But I'm definitely starting to see more highlights on them, which I like. Subsurface can wash out highlights and shadows, and that's when you start getting more and more of that kind of gummy bear effect. If you have your values low enough, it's going to give you just that right little bit of softness to it, but not so much that's washing out your shadows and your highlights. So let's jump into ZBrush. And staying organized with this is going to be the one thing that we really want to make sure we're doing. So I already showed you how to organize my maps, so it's going to be easy for me to bring them in here and kind of keep that organization. We're going to apply them as separate layers, so just kind of keep that in mind. But because we have multiple UDIMs and ZBrush doesn't necessarily work amazingly well with UDIMs, we have to follow kind of a certain workflow here. So this is going to take a lot of time, but it's not necessarily difficult. So this process might take you, half an hour or a little bit longer, but it's just going to be the same repetitive thing. So the first thing we need to do is get some polygroups here. So we're going to go under polygroups, and I'm going to do UV groups. And if you turn on your poly frame, you can see that my UVs are separated by the UDIM spaces. And I should have more UDIMs than that. Let's try auto group with UV, or sometimes the colors are so close together. There we go. So auto group with UVs. Now they're all separated into the proper UDIM spaces. So we can go ahead and turn off poly frame. And we're also going to have to know which UDIM goes in each space. So if you need to have Maya open for this, or Mari open for this, but both of those you're going to be able to see what UDIM spaces things come from. And then when we're applying this, we also want our geometry in the highest subtool level. So we want to make sure that we turn that up all the way, and that way we're going to be able to project all this detail. So if I'm remembering correct, the face is in UDIM space number 2. But while it looks like it's updated already, I can jump into Maya here because I have it open. Go to UV editor. And yep, so we can see the face is in UDIM space number 2. So I'll show you this process with just the face, but I'll need to project this with each one before the next video. So I'm going to hold down Control-Shift, and I'm going to click on the front of the face, and that should select that polygroup and hide the rest of the UDIM spaces. Alright, I'm going to go under layers, and I'm going to create a new layer. And you need to be on the highest subdivision level to do this. And let's go ahead and name this one Displace. So this is going to be our displacement layer. A lot of times it's also good to store a morph target, so if we need to paint something off, we can. So I'm going to scroll down here, go to morph target, and store morph target, and this basically stores this as my default sculpt. And then we're going to come back up to layers, make sure that that displace layer is still recording. I'm going to go to texture. I'm going to import. It's a ZBrush, displace folder, and let's grab that displace 1002. That's the UDIM space that has the front of the face. So I'm going to go back to texture. I'm going to make sure I select that one. And once that's selected, I'm going to click on Make Alpha. And then I'm going to Control-Shift, click the front of the face again, so we're just in that one UDIM space. If not, it's going to repeat these details for each UDIM space out there, and it's going to become a mess pretty quick. Alright, and now with that hidden, I'm going to scroll down here to Displacement Map, and I'm going to select that alpha that I just made. That should be this one. With that selected, I'm going to up the intensity. Let's try 0.05 to start with. And let's kind of move in closer here. So that's definitely not enough. Oh, let's turn displacement on. Let's make sure there's no texture map turned on. There is, so let's turn that off. Looks like it wants to turn those both on at the same time. So under texture map, let's do new texture. That'll just give us a blank texture, and now we can have our displacement on. So I'm seeing some issues through here, and this type of stuff will either be the way the UVs are laid out. Actually, what I did not do is under texture, for this guy we need to flip it vertically, because ZBrush handles textures different than Mari does. So now I'm going to go back and let's select this again. Doesn't look like that one was flipped. Oh, let's make alpha one more time with it flipped. There we go. Let's select the new one. There we go. Okay, so now everything's lining up. So I'm going to keep increasing this intensity, and I'd like to go a little bit too high, because on the layers we can always bring it off a little bit. And with the displacement detail, that's going to be our highest detail, and we'll go lower with these values as we go down in the map size. So I think this is probably pretty good. We might want to go just a little bit higher, so maybe 0.12, and that looks pretty good. So from here, we're going to apply displacement. And that actually applied the displacement map to my character. Now I did it too high. I would say one thing when you apply displacement map, sometimes it gives you just a little bit more than what you were looking at. But that's fine because I can go into this displacement layer right here, and I can actually lower it down. A little too low with that. So you can see the other spots where we don't have the displacement detail yet. So all we would do is move on to the next UDIM tile. We want this returned all the way to 1 before we did that. So I put this all the way back at 1. I would hit the record button, so this is set in record mode, and then I would transfer the rest of the maps. You're going to have to do that for me I have 5 maps of each, so I'm going to do it for all 5 maps for displace, all 5 maps for tertiary, all 5 maps for micro, and then we'll adjust those before we bake them out. So go ahead and get all your detail transferred over, and then we'll look at the baking out process of displacements.